We live in especially uncertain times, and so it is understandable for us to feel a measure of dread and anxiety about the future, even as we also feel hope. But let me tell you a story. Many of you have gone to Orenco Woods, a 42-acre nature park just a block to the east of church. You can hike 1.6 miles of trails on the park's gently rolling hills of oak savanna and upland forest, while looking for red-tailed hawks and black-tailed deer. You can pause on its spectacular bridge above a wetlands, where herons and beavers can be spotted. You can ride your bike along the regional Rock Creek Trail that goes through the park. What an idyllic place. Metro's description of the park says, more than a century ago, the park was part of the Oregon Nursery Company, the largest nursery on the West Coast and best known for Orenco apples. Metro and the city of Hillsboro later purchased the site, restored habitat along Rock Creek, and built new bridges and other improvements to welcome visitors. Well, that description fails to mention the immense efforts it took for the park even to exist. The Orenco Nursery Company folded during the Depression. Later, the Hillsboro Elks Lodge purchased the land where the nature park now is, and they ran a golf course there for decades. In 2004, after the golf course began losing money, the Elks Lodge sold the land to Venture Properties, a developer who wanted to build 400 houses there. However, at the time, the land was designated on the city's comprehensive plan as open space. In fact, as the Oregonian newspaper reported, both Hillsboro's own Parks and Trails master plan and city leaders had promised to increase the local stock of parkland. But Venture Properties wanted the city to rezone the land for residential use. The decision went to the Planning Commission. As the Oregonian reported, Planning Commission meetings are usually very sparsely attended. The 5 hearings regarding the Orenco Woods property routinely attracted crowds of over 40 and 50 and lasted sometimes until after midnight. Many of our church members were among those crowds. I will never forget how at one meeting the developer's staff took advantage of their being allowed to testify first. They talked on and on for hours, claiming that the proposed development would have no adverse effects on traffic in the old Orenco neighborhood. That's this neighborhood. By the time that citizens were allowed to speak that night, it was so late that most had left, needing to get up to go to work the next day. As the Oregonian reported, after 5 hearings and hours of testimony, the Planning Commission, however reluctantly, approved the zone map change. In May 2005, for the Orenco community, reeling from the decision, all hope seemed lost. However, a few key people never gave up. As the Oregonian reported in a 2015 article, Orenco advocate Jim Lubisher, representing Orenco pro se, that is, without the help of an attorney, decided to appeal the case, eventually taking it as high as the Oregon Supreme Court. Lubisher's appeals were denied every time. But his efforts held off the $15 million sale agreement between the Elks and Venture until late 2007. Then, in 2008, the housing bubble burst. The value of the land dropped, and eventually the property was foreclosed on. That's when lifelong Orenco resident and local realtor Dirk Knudsen stepped up to the plate. He worked relentlessly for 2 years to find out who now owned the land, whether it was for sale, and if so, who the broker was. The full detailed story is absolutely amazing. I'm just sort of giving you the skeleton. After accomplishing that, and before other interested buyers could take steps, as the Oregonian reported, Knudsen rushed to assemble a coalition of potential buyers. He approached city leaders who, now that the land was cheap, had become interested in turning the property into a park. Using money from the 2006 Metro Natural Areas Bond Measure, Metro got involved and ponied up $2 million. The city was willing to spend another $2 million. The Trust for Public Land helped facilitate the deal, and by the end of 2011, the land belonged to the city. Finally, on a rainy day in early 2017, Orenco Woods Nature Park held its grand opening. As a Metro article reported, the turnout was amazing, said Hillsborough Mayor Steve Calloway, but not surprising because people love Orenco and they're so excited for this park. So, you just never know what will happen if you persevere. Two familiar quotations remind us of the value of being determined. As Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Consider the scope of the Orenco Woods project. It wasn't an endeavor to change the world, but it went beyond any individual's own small circle. It's only natural for us to think mostly about our own small circle of family and close friends, but what can happen if we think beyond that? If we drop a pebble into our small pond and cause our circle to widen? What if we ask ourselves, what are ways, even small ways, that we can be the change we want to see happen? We can start out by keeping our eyes open, by being aware of what is lacking. Here in Hillsborough, the library staff at both the Brookwood and the Chute Park libraries have the philosophy, when we see a community need, we try to fill it. For instance, they have thoughtfully created unexpected services, including a sensory room at Brookwood. Here's the description. If a trip to Brookwood Library ever gets to be too much, the newly redesigned sensory room provides the perfect escape. Created as a refuge for children and adults experiencing disability, the room gently stimulates the senses without overwhelming. Dim lights, cozy reading areas, and nature videos on a loop create a calm, soothing space. We wanted a place for people to decompress, the library staff explains. While designated for people experiencing disability, the sensory room is open to all, as long as they silence their cell phones and respect others' need for a calming space. Such consideration and compassion can be found in many places. In an essay called We Can Never Know, J.E. Abernathy Jr. writes, Dr. Richard Cabot tells the story of a young theological student in clinical pastoral education who was encountering for the first time in his life a patient whose illness was so severe that the doctors told the student that this woman had slim chance of survival. The woman asked the young man to pray for her, and in this first encounter with such a request, the student minister was overwhelmed with feelings of inadequacy and despair. He turned away from the bedside and buried his face in his hands. He fought back the tears and tried to regain control of his emotions. Finally, he got himself together and stood up. Embarrassed and ashamed, he took the woman's hand, offered a simple blessing and goodbye, and fled from the room. Much to the surprise of the clinicians, the woman underwent an unexpected recovery. When Dr. Cabot was talking with her later about how she was able to rally and respond so well, she replied, I think it all began with that young theological student who was so intense in his prayers for me. Abernathy concludes, we can never be sure how our companionship and service will be an agent of hope and healing. Sometimes the things that we least expect to be helpful will be the things most remembered. Historian, activist, and author Rebecca Solnit writes this about hope. It's the belief that what we do matters, even though how and when it may matter, and who and what it may impact are not things we can know beforehand. We may not, in fact, know them beforehand. We may not, in fact, know them afterward either, but they matter all the same. And history is full of people whose influence was most powerful after they were gone. all of us are capable of small ways of bringing about change. The Good News Network reported on a new poll that compiled the top 30 most unexpectedly delightful things to happen in an average day. The survey of 2,000 adults found 36% love it when someone lets them jump the line in a supermarket. The nicest things are those which are totally unexpected, and they don't have to be big things. Sometimes little moments lead to big smiles. But it's not just being on the receiving end of these unplanned surprises that brings the most joy. 77% of those polled find making others happy improves their mood too, which is why 36% try to do this as often as they can. Such acts include smiling as they walk past another person, just being there to listen to a friend, and telling someone they're proud of them. 84% of those surveyed said these moments in life restore a little hope in humanity. And half say they're more inclined to pay such moments forward if they've been on the receiving end themselves. Among the top 30 unexpectedly delightful things to happen were a compliment from a stranger, receiving a postcard, getting home from work and finding someone else has cooked dinner, when you're brought breakfast in bed, your neighbor bringing over a baked good. Now let's take a few moments for all of you to share delightful things that unexpectedly have happened to you. Those of you on Zoom can write your responses in the chat. They will be shared with the congregation. So you can call it out and I will repeat it in the microphone so that everyone can hear. Unexpectedly delightful things that have happened to you. Seeing the emerald bee on the purple morning glory. Okay.
Having someone tell me they were leaving a free parking space just as I was looking for one.
Having someone tell me that they were leaving a free parking space just as I was looking for one.
This morning on a walk, a hummingbird almost landed on my shoulder.
Going on a walk, a hummingbird almost landed on my shoulder. Walking in Orenco Woods over here, saw a beautiful buck with big antlers, and he just watched him, and he watched her. It's beautiful. Okay. Anybody?
Driving to work, seeing a family of deer just grazing the grass.
I'm sorry, I already missed that. Say it again.
I said, driving at work, seeing a family of deer just grazing in the grass.
Driving at work, seeing a family of deer grazing in the grass. Thank you. Anyone else?
When we were driving here, we saw a dog happily walking with its, I guess, toy. Yeah, with its toy, got a big toy in its mouth.
Driving here, seeing a dog walking happily along with its big toy in its mouth. Megan, did you have one?
Small little thing, but when I was at Costco last week, I took a cart from somebody who had just emptied it so that they didn't have to put it back. And then as I was emptying that cart, somebody took it from me and said, "I'll take it for you."
Yeah, when you're
Small little thing like you said.
yeah, a small little thing. When Megan was at Costco, just as somebody was emptying their cart, she was able to use it, and just as she was emptying that cart, someone else was able to use it, so you didn't have to put it back. Yes?
This last week in the pamphlet paper, I just noticed a big ad for the new 7-story building, Merrill Gardens. But there were several things in the pamphlet paper's ad that didn't make sense to me. They seemed incorrect. So I just happened to call the management office and talk to this guy who said, like, "Oh my God, everything you noticed was false." I mean, he goes, "I don't know how our team in Seattle could have made all of those mistakes in that ad." And he thanked me. I actually felt like I had accidentally done some public service.
Okay, so he was reading the newspaper and saw an ad for the new 7-story building in downtown Hillsborough and noticed that some of the details in the ad were completely false. So he called to report them and did the job of a good citizen because now they were able to fix them. Yes. Anybody else?
Someone let me in while I was stuck in terrible traffic. Let me merge.
Kathleen, someone let her in while she was stuck in traffic. Just someone letting you merge in. Yeah, yeah. Anything else?
My husband made a blueberry picking with me yesterday, and for many, many years he's been claiming that's the most boring thing in the world, so I'm not going to come. And he knew it was important for me, so I went yesterday, and he came. And he found it delightful.
Okay, and what was it that you went to? I missed it.
Unexpected. My husband came with me blueberry picking.
Ah, okay, her husband unexpectedly went with her blueberry picking. He didn't typically go. Yesterday he went. There you go. These little things. Okay, anybody else here in the sanctuary? All right, let's try on Zoom. Sarah, did anybody have any?
Mary Jacobs had a surprise party that was an unexpected delight. And yesterday, George and I went to a very large retirement party, and by the time we got there, there were cars parked all along the road leading to the house. But we were directed into the driveway of the house, where there were very few parking places reserved for old people.
All right, thank you all. As Nikki Bonas wrote, you never really know the true impact you have on those around you. You never know how much someone needed that smile that you gave them. You never know how much your kindness turned someone else's entire life around. You never know how much someone needed that long hug or deep talk. So don't wait to be kind. Don't wait for someone else to be kind first. Don't wait for better circumstances or for someone to change. Just be kind, because you never know how much someone needs it. Sometimes small experiences of serendipity can alter someone's life path. When I was in high school, I was at the Del Mar train station north of San Diego to send my older brother off to Caltech. I'd applied to Occidental College, so when I saw a young man there with an Oxy gym bag, I went over to chat with him and his girlfriend. She recommended that I choose a certain dorm, which I did, and during my freshman year, I ended up having a room next door to her. She turned out to be an important person to me at Oxy because she helped me get a job at the Oxy post office, with the best boss I've ever had, incidentally. Plus, she told me about Richter International Fellowships, and I ended up going to Denmark, where I not only researched Danish folk schools, but saw the country, learned the language, met Danish relatives, and made discoveries about my family history. Little did that young man at the train station know that his Oxy gym bag could make such a difference. As Samuel Johnson wrote, our brightest blazes of gladness are commonly kindled by unexpected sparks. It's also worth considering that the foundation of being kind to others is being kind to yourself. That can start with being aware of what Deb Dana, a licensed clinical social worker, calls glimmers. In the concept she coined, glimmers are the opposite of triggers. She explains they're a cue in the day, either internal or external, that sparks a sense of well-being. They're personal to each of us. A glimmer could be as simple as seeing a friendly face or a spectacular sunrise, hearing a soothing sound or a favorite song, feeling sand between your toes, smelling freshly baked bread or a fragrant flower. Basically, notice something in the environment that brings a smile. Glimmers routinely appear in everyday life, yet frequently go unnoticed. They are easily overlooked because, to help you survive, the human brain is wired to pay more attention to negative events than positive ones. Glimmers happen regularly, but because they are micro moments, you need to be on the lookout for them. Once you learn to look for glimmers, you find they are all around you. And then you can pay more attention to them, and you naturally begin to look for more. See, stop, appreciate, remember, share. I have long thought of those types of moments as my daily delights. And I have found that by writing them down as I notice and savor them, my day is shaped for the better. So the next time that you feel dread and anxiety about the future, consider these words by activist and author Joanna Macy. Focus on what you want to do. In the end, you are strengthened by uncertainty. You can count on one thing: your intention, motivation, desire for a livable future and the welfare of all beings. Don't try to figure out effectiveness. Effectiveness matters less than motivation. Feel glad about giving a damn. Be glad you care. That's all you need. You can always count on it. The feeling of aliveness is profoundly satisfying. In any great adventure, there are always obstacles. So, revel in moments of unexpected beauty. Be glad for serendipitous experiences. Think about acts of kindness. Ponder the story of the young theological student. Keep in mind how the Orenco Woods Nature Park came to pass. Remember, you just never know what will happen. Now, please rise and join in singing